The Badgers had choices at quarterback. Billy Edwards, Bo Pribula. Did they pick the right one? Let's talk about it. Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Harings. Appreciate you jumping in. We got Justin with us today. Appreciate you being an everydayer, being part of this community. Today's episode, we were talking about the quarterback decision this offseason. If the Badgers had a chance at Beau Pribula, which it sounds like they did they make the right choice with Billy Edwards? Plus some reserve players the Badgers are going to need this year and some recruiting thoughts. Justin, my guy, Beau Pribula, Penn State's quarterback last year, who Badger fans unfortunately know pretty well because he came into Camp Randall and beat us in the second half. Had an interview and talked about the fact that, hey, I was coming to Madison. That was kind of where my sights were set. I'm paraphrasing here. But before I could do that, they took Billy Edwards Jr., and then obviously he ended up at Missouri. What was your first thought on that 30,000-foot view, your very first reaction to that interview and that quote?
Well, if you recall my time in the Discord, I was heavily on Pribula as being the guy that I wanted. I loved the mobility. I thought that he made some really tough plays against us in that game where there were just some dime throws that he made that absolutely were just crushers against that game against Penn State. And when the offseason came, I'm like, that's a guy I want to see as target. I'm like, he's a guy that has multiple years left. I will be very interested to see what happens at Penn State if they choose to, or if Allard chooses to come back, and how that's going to affect things with regards to him. I thought Allard would come back because I just didn't think that there was enough quality, like, moments for him where you looked at it and be like, that's an NFL play. And that's pretty much what happened. Now, what I will come back and say is on the Billy Edwards side of things, I do think they made the right decision in terms of what they needed for this year, which was, I think you needed somebody who had a very high floor, which I don't think you necessarily had with Beau Pribula for this year.
That is well said. Let me start with, I'm going to couch it first. I'm going to say what I said in the Discord, where either of these feels like a win to me from where you were last year. If you ended up this year, if you went the Pribula route, I think we'd be excited about it. I think we would look at that as, what an upgrade. I think we also look at Edwards as, man, also an upgrade. So I want to start there. Like, I think either way you went, you're getting better. I really agree with your point. This year is so critically important for this coaching staff and this team with this schedule and with what happened the last year. Man, they need something that they can really count on. I think Edwards gives you a little bit more of that. Although I'll say this, Edwards, for being a guy who's been in college for years, hasn't played as much as a guy, right? Like there's not 3 years of starting experience there. So does that maybe make you think twice about like knowing exactly what you're going to get with Edwards? Because he really just started last year.
I think I look at it from the standpoint of he's got at least a season's worth of starting under his belt versus a guy who's basically played parts of games up to 2 games worth of production. Pribula had some really nice moments against us. He was used as mostly a runner in his other time there. And I honestly can say that I have no clue how much he was actively pushed to really be a read and react quarterback. Whereas we know Billy Edwards had all the pressure put on him. Like you can look at his film and people will be super critical of him. And I think it's unwarranted to a degree. And I was one of the people that was super harsh on him to start with. When you watch the film and how horrific that offense was, the fact that his numbers were as good as they were, it was actually kind of impressive. Like, I watched them try to run the football, and it's like when you see a running back just getting stomped in the backfield, and you see the offensive line just constantly giving up free rushers when he's standing and trying to look, go through his reads. Kind of look at that, and you're like, man, I can't get a super accurate view of what he looks like in a clean pocket.
Yeah, that offensive line was trash. It was completely trash. And he was getting beaten up. He was getting hit. He was having to run. He didn't have time to come to his third read, which I think is an important part of this. It's hard to tell. Like, because one of the knocks on him is he doesn't see the field great. Like, he makes some decision issues. There's some decision issues. Well,
you get tunnel vision when you have that kind of pressure.
Like, I guess what, dude? If I'm on a safari and a rhino's charging me, I'm not going to take a picture of the giraffe. I'm going to run. So I don't know if that analogy works perfectly, but like he just had no protection in that scheme. One of the other things I think, so we put this poll up in the Discord, our Locked On Discord, and 57% said Pribula. They would take Pribula over Edwards, which I think is fair. Again, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer here. I think the allure with Pribula is the ceiling, and you get an extra year of eligibility. Like you can stop cycling quarterbacks every year.
I think that's the bigger part. And I think you also look at, like, you and I talked to Toolbox about him, and I think that's really the difference. The mobility plays with Pribula, and you look at it and you're like, it's kind of intoxicating to a point because you're like, he can really create opportunities for himself that I don't think you can get from Edwards quite as much. Edwards is definitely mobile and can move, but he's not a guy who can really press the line of scrimmage like Pribula can, where he's like, if you miss on him, he may get 20 yards.
Yeah.
I think Edwards is more of like, I'm going to take that 5 yards. I'm going to take that 10 potentially if everything goes right. Pribula can really run.
Yeah, I agree with that. And to your point, though, Pribula never had that crosshair on him. We don't know what he's going to look like after 3 games of getting hit with film on him. When defense coordinators can take a look at him and say, okay, this is what he likes doing. Let's take that away and let's see what he does next. We at least have a feel of Edwards. He has a year of film on him. People have adjusted, and he still played relatively well given that scheme and that system he was in. I think that the upside with Pribula is higher. I think the floor with Edwards is higher. And either way, I think you have Carter Smith behind them. So either way, you have that youth that you're looking for, maybe with Pribula. So I think it makes sense either way.
I think it might be safe to say that you could look at this year and say that the ceiling for Edwards is higher. And I say that because I think he's more polished in terms of the passing game and understanding things. It's going to be kind of a growth process for Pribula this year, going through his reads, really seeing defenses key on him and try to disguise things and make him think that I don't think he's had to do yet. You had such limited situations defensively, and it's hard for me to say without knowing how defenses were reacting directly to him, especially with his threat to be a runner, that you don't really know how many situations he was put into where it's 3rd and 7, you need to come up with a pass play here. Because most of them were probably short yardage. Yeah. We're putting you out there as an extra thing that the defense has to key on you on a 3rd and 3 or whatever, where they're worried about him, doing a option and just keeping the ball and going around the edge. That was a lot of what he did.
He was put in simpler situations for sure. And with a really good offensive coordinator, great running backs, an excellent tight end. Now, he didn't have receivers on his team. That's fair. But let me ask you this. At the end of the year, and I just throw this hypothetical out there, is it going to be fair to criticize the coaching staff if, let's say, for whatever reason, Edwards is another failed transfer quarterback for the Badgers and Pribula plays really well? He looks like the dynamic version of the player that we think he can be. If he looks like that and Edwards doesn't play well or doesn't play well enough, is it going to be fair to criticize the staff?
He's actually stepping into a really good ecosystem at Missouri, so this very well could play out that way. I don't know how much pressure is going to necessarily be put on him to be the guy and have to carry that team. Edwards is going to have more pressure on himself here. I think he's going to have more than on his back to do this. I think he does have some weapons, but I'm not totally sold on the line depth for us this year that we're going to be able to say we're just going to run the ball 50 times this game and grind teams down. I think there's going to have to be more balance to it than what we expect. I will say there is a chance that that's going to happen where you look at it and you say, man, I expected more from Edwards. I honestly think it's going to be a situation where we look at it and I think both teams are probably happy with where they went.
Yeah. I think that's possible too.
I actually think Edwards is going to have a good season. I will be shocked unless it's injury again. And then I honestly, at that point, I feel bad for Luke Fickell. Like, you can't keep a quarterback healthy. And I don't think it's really your fault. Some of this stuff has just been stupid. Yep. But you've had bad luck if that happens again.
Yeah, that's just bad luck. Like, that's not on Fickell. A guy breaks his helmet breaks his hand against Iowa throwing the ball because he hits his hand on a helmet is Mordecai. Tyler Van Dyke is literally just running. He might as well be running errands in the grocery store.
There's foot caught in the turf. And
yeah, that's just a terrible break. I'll finish on this one with Edwards. You know, I talked to somebody in the building, and one thing they said is they actually said I was excited about Pribula, the possibility there, and then we met Billy Edwards. Like I'll tell you this, he checks all the intangible boxes, which is
from a leadership standpoint, I really like him. He seems very mature,
for
and
a
he seems to
quarterback.
have a little bit of that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah,
I want to show you up vibe to him, which is why we like Carter Smith. Like, there's the same vibe there. Like, I'm winning. It's a not. I think I'm good. It's a I'm going to win this game. That's the attitude.
Well, make no mistake, that's why people love all the great quarterbacks. That's why they loved Elway. That's why they loved Manning. I mean, Brady certainly had that. Montana, like these are all greats, and Curtis Smith's not going to be any of those guys, obviously, but all the good to great quarterbacks have that FU factor. They just do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. Talk about some players that you guys aren't talking about, but that I think and Justin thinks the Badgers are going to need this year. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show over at Game Time. Game Time is incredible. The spot to get all your tickets. We're going to be doing our Locked On event against Iowa this year, right, Justin? We're doing Iowa?
Yeah, Iowa.
We want tickets. We're going to get them on Game Time. I encourage you to get tickets to Kohl Center, Camp Randall, but also concerts, theaters, monster truck rallies. Let's go do more stuff in life. Demolition derbies, whatever it is. Go do more things in life. So when you're on your deathbed, you lived a life worth living. Get those tickets on Game Time. Unlock those adventures over on Game Time. Yeah, what's up, man? I thought you were saying something. My bad.
No,
I
was gonna say, nobody ever looks back on their deathbed and says, "I wish I hadn't gone to that monster truck rally."
No,
I guess unless something goes horribly wrong at the rally.
Except for the person that died at that rally, like But anyway, do more things on
Final
Game
Destination.
Time. Unlock the adventures. Last minute tickets, lowest prices over on Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. You can create the account, redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Justin, I like this idea. You came up with this. Let's talk about some players that are under the radar that the Badgers football team might need this year. I have a list. I think you have a list. I'll start with Daniel Neal. I think he's a guy that every year we've had quarterbacks get hurt, and it doesn't have to be catastrophic, right? It doesn't have to be Van Dyke, but
it could be a drive or a finish a game.
Could be a drive, or it could be he got the wind knocked out of him, sprained an ankle, whatever it is. Dude, I think there's going to be a point this season that Daniel Neal's going to need to go in, and maybe it's third quarter Iowa, maybe it's second quarter Minnesota, whatever, and just don't let the wheels fall off. I think that's why he's here this year. I think he's the bridge to probably Carter Smith. But I think that's a really important bridge for this season. So I'm going to start mine off with Daniel Neal.
Yeah, for me, I think the first one that I would go with is Antonio Turner. I think he's going to be a guy on that second line for the inside linebackers. That is, when you look at that group, there's not a ton of experience behind the starters. He's a guy who I think can be someone who they're more confident and comfortable with going out there and being a guy that has a stable, high floor to put out on the field that can be productive if need be.
Yeah, I like that. And you're right. When you look at the experience there, even the upper class guys, like how much
haven't played much. Yeah.
Allegro's never played a full season as a starter. Tackett's been in and out with injuries his entire career. There's not a lot of established experience there. I think that's a good one. Let me go with Davis Heinzen, the tackle they brought in, offensive lineman they brought in from, was it Western Michigan or Eastern Michigan or Central Michigan?
I think it was.
Was it Central? I think it was
Central. Yeah.
One of the directional Michigans, but I'm not convinced he's coming.
The same team, just three different logos.
They should combine teams and just call it Omnidirectional Michigan University and dominate everybody. But I think Brunner's your starting tackle, right? Yeah. That Smokesman there, I've said that for a long time. I think he's the best option to kick out. And I'm not sure Heinz and then slides into one of your starting spots at guard. I think you maybe have Kadonko, maybe have Benz. I'm just not sure Heinz is a starter.
You know who the other starter is. Well, if we're going based off of current, it's going to be Kadonko at right, and probably means that you're putting Emerson Mandel at left.
I hope so. Mandel's a guy that's been dinged up a lot, right?
Yeah.
Which is the only thing I'm worried.
He's got to be healthy.
And
still hasn't bench well.
Honestly, you and I both have said it for a long time. We should have just left him at guard so he got all the reps there and didn't waste time getting reps at tackle. Anyway, but my point is, I don't think Heinzen's starting, right? I don't think ideally he's your starter, but I think he could be your sixth man that plays either tackle spot, can play some guard. He can play kind of that role where first body down, I'm going to put Hines in because he's played a lot of ball. I trust him. He's experienced. Wherever we need him, I think he can be the switchblade on the offensive line.
Okay. I think that's fair. I wasn't quite sure whether to put him at starter or not.
I'm not sure either, to be fair. That's just what I think is going to happen, but.
All right. For me, the next guy is Michael Garner. I actually he's a guy I took a look at after we got him. And I watched his high school film because there wasn't a ton out there for Grambling. I actually really liked the high school film. I thought that we had Wilnerson Telemark that we were going after last cycle, and I thought he was better than him on his high school film looking at it. And I'm like, man, Grambling getting this guy was actually pretty impressive. He wasn't really super highly rated out of high school, and I actually felt like he should have been significantly higher based off the physical tools. Like he's a more fluid athlete than Telemark was. I thought he was quicker. And now he's a guy who's really grown. And I think that he's someone that you look at behind Corey Walker as a guy who, if he comes off the field, he may have better raw tools than what Walker does. I don't think he'll be as productive necessarily. And I don't think he's remotely as experienced. But he's a guy that I think, if you look at it, has an opportunity to really be, if he grows into it, a big physical specimen on that edge. I think there's some good bursts for some pass rush. Now, make no mistake, I don't see him being a guy who's going to be long-term a disruptive NFL guy, but I do think he can be a good college player at that position.
Yeah, which we need.
Yes.
Like this defense line desperately just needs some good college players on the edge, in the middle, and across the front seven, quite frankly. I think he's a guy that slept on. When you look at his size and his ability to do a couple things really well and provide solid depth, I think that's a good one there. I got Grant Steck as my next one.
Okay.
I think you look at some of the issues we've had at tight end, and I was thinking about this too. What is Coach Grimes going to want to do when he wants to have two tight ends that can block? It's going to be Ashcraft and Steck. If it's not, Aker kind of filling in, into that role, Aker filling into that role.
Yeah, I think you want the bigger frame. I think you have to go Steck.
Because Lance Mason, I think, can give you some. He's going to give you something vertically in the passing game. He's not going to block like Steck.
You might crack him down out of space, like if he's in the slot, but I don't see him being the guy that you're going to put on the edge and say, all right, unless you're going to chip, you're gonna be out here. Like if you want somebody to actually help with the defensive end, it's going to be Steck.
Yep,
and he was out there for some first team reps in the spring.
And you lose a guy like Koziel, which only elevates Steck a little bit more. I think Steck is going to play a pretty significant, unheralded role this season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Next one I'll go for me is one of my dudes, Emilio Agard.
I got him on too. I got him on my list too. I love
it. Right. Well, then we have a good one to talk about. I think he's ready to play. I legitimately think that if he gets pressed into duty because somebody goes down, that he's going to be ready to be out there and play. I felt like coming into his freshman year, his coverage skills were probably the best that we've seen from a high school player in a very long time. I honestly think if you've seen video of the corners, and they showed some of that where they were reading the questions and stuff to him and the other corner, who's the other starter? Why am I blanking?
Oh,
Rico. Both look huge. Yeah. Like they've put on a lot of good weight, and Agard really bulked up. Like he looks like he's physically ready to go out there and play with a bigger wide receiver. I think we're going to be impressed by him this year if he gets out on the field. I think the floor for him is very high because I think the technique level for him was advanced coming in. I think you and I both agree that really the knock on him is if he was 6'1" or 6'2", we'd be talking about a guy that was probably a mid 4-star.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Easy.
He's 5'10". He could still be extremely like we've seen 5'10" corners at Wisconsin be good. And I actually think he's got better tools than most of the ones that we've seen play good football.
I'll just say this. I'm biased as heck with that kid. The interviews I've done, like he is so easy to root for. His family's incredible. He's incredible. Aside from all the stuff you just listed, which is completely on point.
Yeah.
He's so He's just such a good kid. Like, and I'll tell you this, how that translates to football is he really cares about it. He works on it. He takes coaching really well. He's going to be smart. He's going to like know the assignments, all those intangible things that play up from good character, which makes it easy to root for players. Players with good character, easy to root for. Those character skills also translate to being better football players. I love the Agard conclusion. I think he's going to be a really good player for this year. The last one I have on this list, and you tell me if this is cheating or not, because he's not a starter. Nicholas Clayton?
I think that's probably fair. He's not a starter.
He's gonna.
I didn't even think about him because
he's gonna be a dude this year for us in pass rush.
I honestly couldn't agree more. He's not on my list, but we've talked about he's my guy from that class, other than Jalen Williams.
Yeah, again. This might not be fair because a lot of people know the stock is up on him now. If I didn't go him, I'll throw out another one. The other one I kind of had on this list was Chris Brooks Jr. Again, not a starter, but that's a player that
he had played a ton in the spring.
I think they're going to use him a lot situationally. They're going to use
in the run game. He's a guy that they really like, and I think there's enough receiving ability there that he doesn't tip his hand.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's going to play this year again in a role that a lot of people may not appreciate, but he's going to have some important moments. I think for the Badgers this season. You got anybody else on your list?
I do. Matt Young.
I like it. That's a good one.
Extra safety. I like both the starters at safety, but you never know if somebody's going to get dinged up or go down. And I think you're going to need somebody who can be productive, and that is a little on the more experienced side. I like Trainer. I don't think that he's as polished, probably as Young is in terms of just playing football. And that's kind of where I look at it. And I also think that it's hard to go against a guy who's 6'3" and moves pretty well in the secondary. Like he's going to have some ability to come downhill. He may even get some opportunity just in that package in obvious run situations where you're like, we're going to put him on the back end and just have him, blow stuff up if he can come downhill.
My worry with him though, it's not even a worry with him. It's I feel like he overlaps a little bit with Zachman and Brown.
He does. And that's why it's going to have to be a guy going out. Yeah. Like I think Brown is your center fielder. I really don't know. I think Zachman's pretty well-rounded. I think Brown, from an actual physical tool standpoint, I like him athletically better than most. I think he can really run, and as proven by the fact that they have him timed at 4.4.
Yeah.
And I think that he can hit. Zachman might have a little bit better actual center field skills, but I think Brown is the better overall athlete, and it's I think he just moves much better than what Zachman does. And that's not no shade on Zachman, who was really productive last year. Young, I think, is a guy who's going to be more of a strong safety if he comes in. He's going to probably have to play downhill and come into the box more.
I would agree with that assessment. Brown has a chance, again, if we're talking about guys, and then we got to get to our next break here. He has a chance to kind of blow up this year, quite frankly, from a national perspective.
I agree. I think I've heard people knock him for his athleticism before, and I'm like, I don't know what you're watching. Every time I see him go in a direction on the field, the dude just explodes. Now you can argue his instincts, maybe because he was a young player, and you and I have talked about this before. He got pressed into having to play the slot, which means you're not playing the slot if you're a slouch of an athlete, number one.
Yes.
But I also don't think that that's his skill set. I think he's a guy you're probably more comfortable with actually playing safety and playing in center field, but he could do that job, so they put him in it. And I think that was a position that we struggled to have bodies for. So Brown was the guy that made sense to put there.
Let's be super clear on something. If you're going to be a slot corner, you move laterally really well. You have to, because there's choice routes that you have no chance of staying with if you can't move.
You're going to get crushed on crossers and stuff like that if you can't.
All right, let's take a quick second here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Justin's favorite topic, defensive line recruiting. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. Also want to say thank you for tuning in. Justin, in a class that we saw Carmelo Reed flip, who we both liked. It wasn't a Jalen Williams level commit, but we both like Carmelo Reed. Now, DJ Baugh tweeted out an offer to Penn State. Oftentimes, where there is smoke, there is some fire. He's also a guy who's taking a visit, I think, to Mizzou. And by the way, we haven't really talked about it on our show, but Drayden Pavey, who was a player we both kind of liked in last year's class, is also not really with the team anymore. There's some other stuff going on there, but sounds like he's probably not going to be part of this program going forward. Where are you at right now in defensive line recruiting?
It's a problem. And I don't know quite how to look at this because you never see Iowa or Minnesota or any of these other schools that are like I would say are kind of our peers right now, given where we're at, struggle with this type of stuff. So are our eyes getting too big for the targets that we're chasing? And at some point, do we just need to look for guys who we think are going to be really productive, solid players versus guys who are going to be freaks? Because I think the cycle was rough. I don't know how you necessarily feel about it. This can't be a Paul Chris cycle. And what I mean by that is you can't have a one defensive lineman cycle at Wisconsin. Like you need to continue to fill that room because it's eventually going to catch up to you if you don't. And we all know that defensive linemen take multiple years to really truly develop, especially if you're not getting the guys that Bama and Ohio State are getting who are, already physically where they need to be and are just freak shows.
Yeah, I agree.
Or Duluth Ba in this class.
I agree. This cycle on the defense line specifically hasn't been very good. And, it's interesting to me. Last year, they were obviously able to land Jalen Williams, which was a massive get. The year before, Ernest Willard Jr., which was another for the Badgers in what they'd traditionally done recruiting on the defense line. That was a massive get for the Badgers. But it feels like there's no middle ground in some of these.
Yeah.
Like, Arthur Scott is a piece that is, I think, more of a developmental piece.
Mm-hmm.
They need a couple just mid high 3-star guys, Justin, that can come in for a year or two and develop.
I think we would feel much, much better about this had they taken Polk too, if they would have kept that visit and brought him in.
Jalen Polk, yep.
Yeah.
For those that don't, not everybody falls recruiting quite as much as Justin. And by that, I mean nobody falls recruiting quite as much as
Jeremiah I think it's Jeremiah Polk, isn't it?
Oh, I'm thinking of the receiver. Yeah, I think Jeremiah Polk. Yep.
And that one will sting because those two guys are similar in a regard. And if you lose one of them, you probably aren't heartbroken. Like you can probably withstand it. But if you lose Ba, you have a guy that I like. I think Arthur's solid. I didn't like him as much as I liked Akponu and also Pavey the cycle before. And that makes me a little afraid that you get a guy that I don't want to, be negative on a kid, but I need to see more. Like I don't necessarily see it with him as much, and it scares me. And I would love to be proven wrong. If Scott ends up being a stud, I will actively go on here and say that I was dead wrong on him. But I'm a little worried that there's a chance that he may wash out, and then you're left with nothing. And defensive line is a tough class to just have a dead class. Like think of that from an offensive line standpoint. If we brought in two guys and neither of them were there, that's a big gap. You can't afford to have stuff like that. Now the transfer portal helps a little bit, but what you're losing with transfer portal more times than not is going to be ceiling, unless you get a kid that is like a freshman that you're bringing in that just after 1 year decided to leave wherever he's at, which is possible, but we haven't really seemed to take that view. It's normally been guys who maybe have 1-2 years left. So we haven't really chased developmental prospects in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I wonder how many what's your target for defensive line this class? I think for me,
they were roughly where we're at for this year, which was, I think they're at 9 or 10 or somewhat. 10 to 12 is where I want to see the defensive line. You have 3 bodies you need for if you're going to play a 3-man down. And that to me means you need to have 9 to 12 in there just because you're going to have guys that don't hit. You're going to have guys that get injured and leave. Mm-hmm. And you can't afford to have a year where nothing hits and then suddenly you're like, okay, we have 7 bodies in that room, 3 guys we truly feel comfortable with, 3 guys that are young, and then 1 guy that may or may not be useful. That's a really tough look to have.
Well, what happens is you have last year. That's what happens. If you in that type of situation, you have
you had 2 guys you could count on.
You're like, we can't rotate. We don't trust the younger guys. We're going to play 2 down linemen, and they're just going to grind them in the dirt because we don't have anybody else we can put in there. Mm-hmm. And I think you and I both agree they did pretty darn well in the front 7 in the portal this cycle. Yeah. You can't count on that every year. You're not going to find those guys every year in the portal cycle. So you have to keep the pipeline moving.
Yeah. And if we're going to take a big picture view on this,
I was just going to say there's still time. Like maybe they'll turn and flip somebody, pull someone else in. I think you need another big body, someone else on the edge that you think can develop into some type of difference maker.
I think if you're going to take some glass half full on this, if you look at it, Right now, guys that should be available still next year, you have Perkins, Dylan Johnson, Akponu, Jamel Howard. So in the interior zero tech type guys, you have a lot of bodies that are going to be able to do that. For your edge guys, you're hoping next year probably Jalen Williams will be able to give you some fit there. Leteju is going to be a guy I think that is going to be hopefully just starting to get the draft steps all together. Like, we love the athletes that they have there. Clayton's going to be more of a specialist to me. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's what he feels like. Some of these other guys feel like they're going to be first and second down, and he feels like a second and third guy.
I think he might grow into more. He's about 240 now.
He could.
You don't need to be that much bigger to play edge, right? And he translates.
I just think you want to keep him fresh, though. Like, you want him on there coming off like a missile on third down or second and long.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like, there is more depth there, but what you run into is if you have a dead class, and I'm not saying this will be, but then it's like a production line, right? It's like a assembly line. Yep. And the parts stop coming for a certain amount of time. Down the road, it gums everything up. It makes it harder.
Absolutely. It means you can't afford to have next cycle be bad. Because if next cycle is bad, say next cycle you take 3 defensive linemen, you miss on 2 of them and only 1 guy hits. Now you have an empty class ahead of that. You have 1 guy that you feel good about coming out of that. You're really empty. You're going to have to hit in the portal hard and hit on those guys for you to be able to fix that room. So this is where, like, it's kind of, and we dealt with this with the previous staff. There were situations, running back room, quarterback room, where we laid off a class and it's like, oh, it's no big deal. We just missed. It's like, no, it absolutely is a big deal. You cannot go empty-handed for a cycle. Now, running back room for us last cycle wasn't necessarily the end of the world because you can stack the classes the way you want to make it not hurt you as much. Even that said, you and I still feel like there should have been a body in that class because you want the bodies in the running back room. Yeah. Having only 4 scholarship backs to me is low.
No, you take a running back
5 or 6 normally.
In my opinion, you take a running back every year at Wisconsin.
Absolutely, if not more than 1.
I will say this, and then we'll end there because this show's running a bit long. But I will say, and I'll kick it to you for your last thought on it. Running back is a little different than defensive line too, right?
It's much easier to recruit to in the portal.
Well, I was just going to say you can hit in the portal at running back easier, and defensive line takes years to develop. You can get a Latimer Latimer could play next year. Like, he could.
He probably will.
He probably won't necessarily need to, but he's probably going to.
Get his feet wet. I think we both agree on that.
There's not many dudes you're pulling out of the high school ranks on the defensive line that Wisconsin can get that are going to play right away. That's the difference.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to wrap it there. Justin, man, appreciate you for jumping on, doing me a solid. This will be out Monday, so when everyone's watching this, but appreciate Justin. Go check out what he's doing as always on Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And we'll definitely talk later.